Welcome everyone to our October 21st TV Toastmaster meeting at Anderson Community Center at 7850 5 Mile Road. And today we will have our regular meeting, but before we get to the meeting, I'll just discuss a little bit of business. Our fall conference is for District 40 is coming up on November 3rd, 4th, and 5th in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And if you want to register for the convention, you go to the d40toastmasters.org website. Right. I think that is all the business I wanted to bring to our attention before the meeting. I will go ahead and introduce our Toastmaster for today is Veronica Sanford.
Thank you, Madam President. I would also like to say that today we have two brand new speakers giving their icebreaker speech, so I'm very excited about that. That's really what Toastmasters is all about. It's beginning speaking and getting better, and also, of course, leadership and communication as well. Also, we have Natalie Vogel, who's our Area 82 Director. At the end of the meeting, she's going to be speaking to us heart to heart a little bit about whatever it is she has to say. I don't want to steal her thunder. So without further ado, I would like to call up our our word of the day, our counter, and that would be Sean Gallagher.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I'll be whatever role that you choose to make me. Today, as a grammarian, I'll be listening to the things you say, and I'll start counting out and let you know at the end of the meeting, things that we use that are not the right words to use, maybe the so's and ands and ums. For me, I clear my throat a bunch. Crutch words that you might use, so I'll make sure to count those out. And we'll use the word of the day, legible. L-E-G-I-B-L-E. Thank you, Suzanne, for writing that down. If everybody writes it down. And if everybody says it out loud, let's all say it together, legible. Legible. Now you remember to use it when you speak up here. Legible means to be able to read or be read in a neat format. And the reason I use this is because I said to Suzanne earlier, I'll do your evaluation in your book. I hope my writing is legible, that you can read it later. I'm the most sloppy writer that you'll ever meet, so I try very hard to be legible. Thank you, Suzanne. So that's my role as grammarian today, Madam Toastmaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Monsieur Grammarian. We have fun here. All right, our next role today is our table topics master, and that would be Michelle Lewis. Please welcome Michelle Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I forgot to ask the question if everybody is open to doing a table topic today. Is everybody willing to do that? Okay, great. Well, my writing's not legible, so I can't really read my questions. However, table topics is about impromptu speaking and putting yourself in that position where you can think on your feet. We all encounter those moments at work and even in some situations at home where later on we're like, I wish I would have said that, or I wish I would have thought about that. So this is an opportunity for you to practice those quick thinking skills. So today I'm going to ask you some questions, and then I'm going to choose someone to answer that question. And you literally have the moment from when you get out of your seat to come up here to the lectern to think about how you're going to respond. You'll have 1 to 2 minutes, and when the light turns yellow, you'll have about 30 seconds to wrap up. It's my favorite time of the year. It's the fall, and it's starting to finally, maybe, not really, start to feel a little bit like fall. So one of the things that cracks me up about the fall season is that America is obsessed with PSL, pumpkin spiced lattes, right? The hashtag PSL is everywhere. Starbucks, get your PSL, it's out for a limited time. And if you walk through the grocery store, you see now there's pumpkin spiced Oreos, there's pumpkin spiced M&Ms, There's even pumpkin spice deodorant. Pumpkin spice cat litter. The list goes on and on. So what is it that's driving this craze in America? Because if you ask our European friends, they think pumpkin's a vegetable and they don't want anything to do with it. So what is driving this craze in America? Do you think it's the seasonality and the limited aspect of it? Do you think that people really love pumpkin spice? What do you think about it? Let's hear. Sean Gallagher.
Wait, look, she was raising her hand.
That's all right.
Thank you very much, Madam Table Topics Master. And I've got to say, I'm very glad to hear, Michelle, that your writing is not legible either, so we're in the same club of being sloppy writers. Let me repeat the question. What is driving the craze of pumpkin spice throughout America? I don't know, stinking.
What do you think about it?
Pumpkin? I'm the traditional guy. When I was growing up, we'd have our pumpkins at, everyone probably went through this. Pumpkins at Halloween, you cut it, you eat the pumpkin seeds, you cook them. You guys do that in this area, you heat them up, and we'll have to talk later. You cook your pumpkin seeds, and then you put your jack-o'-lantern on the front porch, and then here comes November, and you go through Thanksgiving where you have pumpkin pie and whipped cream. And that was it growing up. Here's what I think about it. I'm still a traditional guy, so I eat M&Ms. M&Ms are probably my favorite candy. I went to Kroger a couple of weeks ago, and I picked up a package of pumpkin spice flavored M&Ms. And they stunk. They were horrible because it didn't make me think of eating pumpkin pie and having whipped cream on it. It made me think of a fake, chemically altered, machine-created flavor in my M&Ms, and it ruined my experience. So I'm still going back to my main M&Ms of when I was growing up. They were plain and peanut, but now they're chocolate and peanut. So if you ask me, I don't like the whole craze, and I think we need to quit it. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master, for making me think of that.
Thank you, Sean. It's interesting. I work for a flavor company, and when we test the concept of pumpkin spice, it always falls to the middle of the pack. So it's got to be more about the craze around the limited aspect of it and what consumers are hyping it up to be. I mean, if you go out there and do hashtag PSL, you'll be shocked at what you see. Fall is another time when your leaves start coming off the trees and you wake up one Saturday morning and your entire yard is covered. However, when you went to bed last night, your entire yard wasn't covered, but your neighbor's yard was covered. And you think you heard a leaf blower out there last night. Veronica, what do you do?
It's true, hardly legible. I live near UC, University of Cincinnati. So for me, it is not likely leaves, but beer cans and bottles that are in my yard. I'm on the downhill side of some co-located residents. That said, I know what I should do. We all know what we should do. Stuff it and then blow up in their face the next time we see it, right? No. What we should do is think about how they feel and speak to them from their point of view instead of waiting till the next night and blowing all that stuff back to their yard or stuffing it and then getting angry, which is sort of my approach. I do believe that crucial conversations, difficult conversations, are something that is an art that we should all get better at. And that if something bothers us, there's a formula to speak those words. When you did this, I felt this. In the future, I would prefer if you were to do this, and in return, I will do that. The formula, right? Seems to make logical sense. I'd wait until the next night, and then I'd throw the beer cans and the leaves back in their yard. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Veronica. I think we have time maybe for one more. What is your favorite Halloween tradition? Natalie, would you like to come up and speak?
Thank you. I'm actually kind of happy that I got that one because I really had something to say for the first one, and I'm going to take it back to the whole pumpkin spice aspect. For me, it would not be hashtag PSL, it would just be pumpkin spice. I don't like coffee, so I'll just leave that part out of it. But for tradition, one of the things that kicks it off for me is just that smell in the house of pumpkin and cinnamon and those kind of things. And for me, it's like a way of welcoming the season, the holiday season. And I think that really is my favorite part, is just the beginning, when it's new and it's exciting. It's not stressful yet. We're still enjoying it. But for me, it's the getting the house clean and starting to bring in the different decorations. I like the newness of it. Thanks.
As long as we're not hearing Christmas music next week, I think I'll be in good shape. But this concludes our table topics portion of the meeting, and I'd like to ask our Toastmaster to come back up.
I now have 3 agendas up here, just in case I forget. I have had an occasion where I had my agenda as a Toastmaster, and somebody took it, and so it was kind of blind. Now we're going to our speaking section of our meeting, which some may find to be the most nerve-wracking or the most exciting. One of the key switches that I learned in some personal development class is whenever you're really nervous or afraid, say that you're excited instead. The body feels the same way. It's the same adrenaline rush. It has just a different context or connotation, and both are probably legible, and that didn't make any sense at all, but I used the word of the day again. So our speaker number 1 is Dave Delahanty, and he is going to be giving his icebreaker speech. Please give him a super warm welcome. Dave Delahanty.
Well, the 3 points I'm going to cover is my personal information and job duties and a couple of fire department stories, and one of them is kind of funny. They actually both involve dogs, and also the one dog one also kind of serious too. My personal information is I've been married for 32 years to my wife, Linda. We have a daughter that will be turning 30 in February. And my job duties at where I work at is I worked at Senko Brands for 40 years. And the first position I've held was a machinist, and I had to run various types of drilling machines and set those up, and I had to check my parts, inspect them visually check them, and also use precision measuring instruments to also inspect the parts. And my second position was a tool assembler, where I assembled pneumatic fastening tool, staplers and nailers, and I had to visually inspect those. And also we actually fired fasteners through all these tools to inspect them. And we had to package them and send them to finished goods for sale. And my other duties on that was also to train other people in the cells and to maintain production records. And my third position is the current position. I work in the reconditioning department, and we recondition aftermarket tools that are sent back from Home Depot and Lowe's and Menards, and I have to repair those. And my other duties on that is also to order parts from finished goods to make the repairs, and I work with sales people to get their product to their sales or to their customers on time, and also take care of logistic issues and some other administrational duties, and to help assist other team members if they need assistance. and also to notify engineering and quality control once our tools come back. And if they have any functionality issues or safety issues, that we report that. And then I also was a volunteer fireman for 12 years on the North Union Fire Department, which today is called Union Township Fire Department. And that's located right across from Eastgate Mall. And I held the following positions. I was a correspondence secretary, which was a spokesperson for the fire department. And then I held a trustee, and that was like signing contracts for fire service for the township, and also signed contracts for, purchasing vehicles and other equipment. And I held the first and second lieutenant, fire marshal, and the assistant fire chief. And I'd just like to tell you a couple of stories about some of the squadrons that I ran on. And the first one was I responded to a sick person, and it was kind of funny because I walked in and the house had hardwood floors in it, and then I was taking the lady's vitals. They had to take the blood pressure and her respirations and her pulse, and while I had the stethoscopes in my ears, and I was just starting to relieve the pressure on the blood pressure cup to get her blood pressure, she had a Chihuahua dog in the back bedroom, and somebody let that dog out. And it was so funny when that dog come charging out of down that hallway, yapping, and his feet was going so fast, and them nails was clicking into the hardwood flooring. And that dog's feet was going so fast, but he wasn't going anywhere because he was just sliding. But when he was barking, I had to take those things right out because the magnification on that, well, that noise between him barking and the nails getting on the floor was something else. And I started laughing because, it was just like watching a cartoon or something. And then the other story is I responded to a possible heart attack. And as we arrived on the scene, we approached the door, and there was a woman that greeted us, and she had one of those Blue Max German Shepherds, and they stand about that high. And she invited us in. She started opening the door, and I said, "Ma'am, you have to put the dog up before we enter." And she insisted that the dog was just like a big baby. And I said, "Ma'am, you're going to have to put the dog up before we enter." And she still insisted that the dog would be okay. And I insisted back that we weren't going to come in until the dog was put up. And she still insisted. And I was getting frustrated because, the dog had to go up so we could get in and render aid to the person that we come there to help. And she was delaying us that. And so I got frustrated with that. And another time we went through the same thing. I told her, "Ma'am, the dog has to go up or we're not going to come in." And she still insisted. And I told her that again. I said, "If you don't put the dog up, we are going to leave." So she still insisted. So I looked to the other two guys and I said, "We're leaving." So he's walking back to the squad. And before we got to the squad, I heard the door open and the lady yelled out that she put the dog away. And as we went into the house, we had to go back into her bedroom because that's where her husband was. And he was laying on the floor between the bed and the wall. And there was only like about 3 feet space between the bed and the wall. So we had to get him up onto the bed so we could load him on the cart so we can take him and transport him to the hospital. Well, after we did all that, before I left, I apologized to the lady because I told her, "I apologize to you because I had to take such drastic action." But I said, if we feel threatened, we don't have to come in. And I said, that big dog was a threat to us. And I'm very sorry that. And that's the way I left it. So.
Great speech, very well done, without
Thank you. I
notes.
forgot to shake your.
Super, that's okay. We got the virtual shake done. Yeah. So that said, we're asked for 1 minute of silence for the evaluator to give your evaluation. Welcome back to TV Toastmasters. We are now going to be welcoming our second speaker of the day. She will also be giving her icebreaker today, which is so exciting. Suzanne Whitrock is going to be giving her icebreaker. Please welcome Suzanne Whitrock.
Madam Toastmaster. All right. So, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, guests, I'm so glad I printed this out because it's really legible. Otherwise, I would have a really hard time and it wouldn't be legible at all. My icebreaker is called the English language. And it's a overall story of my life, actually. So, I was standing at the blackboard, trying to figure out the math problem. Why can I not get the answer? My brain was starting to feel like mush, more and more, while the whole classroom was staring at me. I was getting more stressed out by the minute. That was me at about age 10. I still see my teacher's face, Herr Weissenberger. He was looking at me from his desk, and with sorrow in his voice, he said, "Du bist a Borcherl," which means as much as, "You poor little dimwit." So here I was, having this sentence branded in my brain, "I am not good at math," period. I also had to start taking classes for dyslexic students. I knew I was just a small girl from a small town in Austria. Not being able to go to the class level that would have allowed me to learn English in school made me feel like I was not smart enough. Oh, how I envied my friends that took English classes, typewriting, or even piano. When they complained about those classes, I could only think, I wish I could take your spot. I always had that intense desire to learn the English language. So I borrowed my best friend's English book and taught myself some basic words, like numbers, days of the week, names of animals, and so on. I remember sitting in the attic of my parents' home and writing the words on the blackboard and giving myself tests. I was about 12 years old. At that time, I did not know that one day I would actually move to America. But this little bit of knowledge gave me the courage for it. I had met Stuart, my future husband. Of course, I did not know that then, while working in a hotel in Salzburg. All I could see was an English-speaking person, and I could practice my language skills with him. That's all I practiced with him. I was about 20 years old. When I came to America for the first time, I was so excited. We met at JFK Airport in New York, and I didn't even think twice about the possibility that he might not be there to pick me up. I was young, the world was wide open to me, and I had no fear. Years later, and several trips back and forth, we got married and lived right here in Cincinnati. My world had gotten so much bigger, but for the most part, I still felt like a small girl from a small town in Austria. Over the years, I became more confident. I worked in a factory, started driving by myself, and found a job in a dress shop. Sometimes I felt like I had to work twice as hard than other employees to figure out the language, counting the money at the cash register, or remembering people's names. They are so different from Austrian names. Jan, Joan, Jane, Jeanette, Janet. So confusing. So just to give you an idea, try to remember these words, these names. Greta, Gretchen, Greti, Greta, Gerlinde. I will test you on these later on. A few years later, I was able to get a job at a hospital. I had to learn a whole different language with all those medical terms and the doctor's lingo. It helped a lot, though, when I gave birth to my son, Alexander. Knowing the terminology was a big comfort for me since I did not have anybody else to help me with it. And then the awakening. My husband was diagnosed with cancer. The learning curve went into overdrive, and with doctor's visits, Cleveland Clinic, tests, and treatments. There was no time to think, just learn and take care of Stuart. Again, I was thankful I was working in a hospital and familiar with some of the procedures. When Stuart passed away, I knew I was not a small girl from a small town anymore. Life had happened to me and I had grown up. Since I was homeschooling Alexander all of his life, he was now in a school for homeschool families. My friend had started the school and she asked me to help with the 23 children that came the first year. That was 6 years ago. Now there are over 120 students, all grades from preschool to high school. I also started to learn about pranic healing, and I'm offering this healing health method to people in need of healing either from emotional or physical problems. And yes, I'm still working at the school, now called Days of Wonder. I'm teaching German, history, art, and surprise, I have my own math class. The children love coming to this class. Maybe it's because when I call them up to the blackboard and they have a hard time figuring out the math problem, I don't make them feel like they're not smart enough. What do you think about that, Herr Weisenberger? Thank you.
One minute of silence. Welcome back to TV Toastmasters. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Well, you're probably seeing this on YouTube or TV, local TV station, but live was quite impactful. Whether or not people use their notes or don't use their notes, the stories just get you. They really do. Okay, that said, I would now like to welcome the general evaluator, which happens to be myself. The general evaluator and the evaluation section of TV Toastmasters and of all Toastmasters, the point is to evaluate the evaluators and also the meeting as a whole. So now I would like to introduce evaluator number one, who is going to be evaluating Dave's speech, Michelle Lewis. Please welcome Michelle Lewis.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Dave, thank you so much for sharing your story. We always say in Toastmasters, your icebreaker is the hardest and the easiest you'll ever give from a speech perspective, because the easiest because you know yourself better than anyone else, but the hardest because it's just getting up here and speaking that really breaks the ice for you and our club. So thank you so much for sharing your story. The objectives of your speech were rather simple, and that was to begin speaking before an audience, to discover speaking skills that you already have and some skills that need attention. Well, I have to say, the first thing that struck me is how approachable you are. You came up here, your eyes are bright, you're smiling, you were very warm and inviting, and if you were nervous, it did not show. So you were very well composed. And I think we got to know you really well. I love how you started out by saying, I'm going to tell you about 3 things. I'm going to tell you about my personal life, my professional life, and I'm going to end with some stories. So that always helps the audience come in and really understand what comes next. You did an adequate job of preparing, and you did speak clearly and audibly. I think you were concerned about the volume, but I had no issues hearing you. And I wanted to just mention the use of notes was lacking, which was great. The only reason I could see is that you had maybe a really short outline, literally a short outline, and that's something that I envy you, because I hope I get to that point someday. But to be able to come up here and just speak without notes is a really a skill that a lot of us need to work on, and I think you did it really well. When they asked for some things that you could have done a little bit differently, you had a clear opening, a middle, and a closing, but I think you could have been a little bit more impactful with your closing, and maybe saying, this is a lesson that you learn about when the firefighter tells you what to do or whatnot. But you could have just kind of given a little bit more impact, and that's just me being very critical because you did so well with everything else. And ultimately, what I really like the most about your presentation is that you told us stories. And as you go throughout your Toastmaster life, you'll realize stories are what resonate with people the most. And I'm going to sit there next time I see you and think about you sitting there telling this lady, not coming in, not going to do it, because you told us that story, and it really creates some memories. So thank you for sharing with us, and we look forward to your next speech.
And I'm going to be thinking about the Chihuahua trying to run down the wooden floors and him pulling the air plugs out. I do that a lot because I have very sensitive hearing and also very good earbuds. And so sometimes people speak on the phone way too loudly. The next evaluator we're going to be welcoming is Sean Gallagher, who's going to be giving the evaluation for Suzanne's impactful speech. Please welcome Sean Gallagher.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Suzanne, this is as much as I did on your evaluation so far, because I had to go very slow to be what? Legible. But these are my notes to read from, and I know you can't read them. This isn't about me. Suzanne, kind of to mirror what Michelle had said, this is a huge start. The icebreaker is a big deal, and you've got to complete it, and you completed it well. Same as what Dave did, you did an outstanding job of telling a story. You really put a lot of facets in your speech that helped to bring the audience in. One of the things I liked is you started out and you gave us inside your mind and your feelings from a very young age. Some of the things you said, I remember standing there and going through this class. I think you were talking about math class. And I think you said something about your brain being like mush. So right away, I think many of us were drawn in and probably could relate to you from some event we had as early, because nobody is perfect or has complete success from the age of any time. But from 1 to 15 years old, there's something in our lives that we go through like that. So you related to your audience immediately by bringing us into how you felt in the situation you had. That's a good audience grabber. Your use of alliteration was both fun and comedic because you went through the American names of Janice and Jan and maybe Jeb and Joe and John. So you used all the same letters, alliteration. Then you went through some, and I might get this wrong, Austrian, German type names, Greta and Goebel and some of the other G's. That was a wonderful tool you used because, of course, you brought a bunch of us in as Americans. What's wrong with those names? Then you flipped it and you said, what about if you were trying to do the Austrian names that I couldn't remember them, let alone use them correctly. Very good tool you used right there, especially for an icebreaker. In the future, I would say the 2 things you're going to want to think about, there's no way you should have worried about this as an icebreaker. But think about the fact you're going to go through 9 other speeches if you continue on the competent communicator path. your notes, of course. You'll have to start relying less and less on them, like we had said about Dave. Don't worry about dropping them 100% in your second speech, but give a little more eye contact with the audience and try to get more of a structure in your brain, but always be willing and ready to refer to your notes. The other thing I noticed that you may not notice but think about is a little lip smacking. We kind of hear verbally some of your, a little bit of that. You may not even notice it yourself. You may see it on the video when you review it. That comes out as something as a crutch. Try to work on it. It didn't detract or take away from the outstanding speech you gave, but something I have to give you as feedback. The other thing I want to touch on, and I don't have a lot of time, is you did something that many speakers can't do. You gave a personal, very emotional adversity point with your husband's illness and death. You delivered it. You brought in the emotions for all of us. And it was hard for you to get through it, but you got through it. And you touched your audience at an emotional point. And that's what Veronica was speaking about after you had spoken. That's something not a lot of speakers can do well. That's a great skill. It's not easy, and I have to applaud you for doing that. So your speech was outstanding for an icebreaker. I look forward to number 2. And I'm going to turn it over to the general evaluator. Thank you. There'll be more notes. I couldn't cover it all in 3 minutes, but more notes in the evaluation sheet.
Great job. I would now like to welcome up our grammarian for the day, and his name happens to be Sean Gallagher.
Thank you so very much, Madam General Evaluator. Word of the day. It was legible, and I think you all knew that because I threw it out at you 1,000 times and told you to write it down and speak it. It was used by Michelle. It was used by Veronica. It was, if I miss anybody, tell me. It was used by Suzanne in her icebreaker speech. Did anybody else use it as well? Good use that we threw that in some of our speaking, both in our roles, table topics, and speaking. So that was a nice work. Some of the crutch words I noticed. Veronica, I don't get to do this often, but I found an from you. You're so often not using those words the rest of us use. I've got to point that out. But what I like that you did, a tool you use is you say something and then you ask the question right. You ask the audience to hypothetically come into the thought you gave them and almost give an opinion. I like the use of right after you say something. Michelle, you used 2 so's. Natalie, this is a tough one. You used kind of. And kind of for me is sometimes a filler word because it really isn't giving us much definition. So think about that when you speak. Dave, you gave a couple us and so, but as your first speech, don't focus on that fact. My job is to give you that so you think about it as you continue on your journey. The thing I did like is when you started out. I think the first or second you used, you paused and almost caught it yourself. So you're already aware of it, that you're starting to do that. The awareness is going to help you get through that. Suzanne already told you the lip smack isn't detracting, but think about that. And I think you used so a couple times. The only other thing, Dave, I did miss, kind of like the lip smack, is an audible inhale. I could hear that as you're going through some of this, and that's from nerves and excitement, but I don't want to become so overbearing that it takes away from your speech. So try to think about that as you go forward. And that's all I've got. Madam General Evaluator.
I would like to now give my general evaluation portion of the meeting and then ask the timer to give the timing so that she knows that she's still on duty to keep me on track. What a meeting! My goodness, this was a great meeting. We have a lot of fun here at TV Toastmasters. My notes are a little bit not so legible, and so I will need to use them. I wanted to mention that our cameraman, Alexander, is providing a service to us in the background, which is really quite remarkable, because what he allows us to do is bring our stories outside the room to the population of Cincinnati, and so therefore is a Cincinnati resource. And so I'd like to welcome those of you in the audience to do come and visit us. It really is something special that we have businessmen, businesswomen who want to speak about their product or their services, etc., can now get on air for virtually no money, except for the membership fee, which is nominal. We can also offer people who have strong points of view or points of view that they want to share with the general population. If it's repetitive and always the same, that's really of no value. But you learn a lot in Toastmasters. And so thank you to our cameraman. Table Topics was a lot of fun. I really liked the use of PSL because I kind of keep my view of the world narrow. And I'm often congested, and so my sense of taste is not as exquisite as it used to be, and therefore pumpkin I don't get pumpkin at all. It's much too subtle, but I do get cinnamon. So there it is. I also I thought it was interesting that you asked me an ethical dilemma about the leaf blowing, and it also something that I struggle with, which is how to treat people who are not always kind and generous in their behavior. Speaker number one, what I do is add to the evaluation that the evaluators gave you, and I thought the evaluator gave you an absolutely great job. I liked that she pulled back to the stories. I loved that you went from reading your notes to a subtle suggestion to just bringing up the 3 points in a heartbeat. And you had like 2 minutes to readjust your thinking about how you were going to give your speech. And I just thought that was really phenomenal, really, really good job. You know, we never stop learning. Okay. So this is the thing. When do we take it to the next level? When do we push ourselves beyond our comfort zone? And is there value to not only ourselves, but our children and the people in our community? I would like to challenge you, Suzanne, to think about pushing this to a competition level speech. You had humor and you had sadness. And then you brought it back to a moral at the end of the story when you became the teacher that didn't demoralize their students. I believe this has all the components of a world-class speech. And you can give this speech over and over and over again. And I challenge you to do it. By that time, you won't need your notes. You'll have honed it down. You'll be able to talk about it with less hesitation, but probably the emotion will still be there. We never get over it. We just get on with it. We use our sorrows to teach others. So there you are. I thought the evaluation was top-notch, but I do encourage you. I have not done that. I'm asking you to do something that I haven't done. But you take it to a world level, and you would have time. It is now October. You will have time to our next competition to get this to that level of speech. Okay, because you've got the guts of it. Marion, always great job. Timer, I will now call you up to give the timings report. Please welcome Janet Kessler.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Sometimes I do not write my times down legibly, but I think I got it this time. We'll see. First, we had table topics. Sean, table topics are to be 1 to 2 minutes. Sean spoke for 1 minute and 39 seconds. Veronica, 1 minute and 36 seconds. And Natalie, 50 seconds. So Natalie was the only one that was a little shy, but that's okay. We'll forgive her. And then speaker number 1, Dave, spoke for, it was a 4 to 6 minute speech, but we're lenient on icebreakers. It was 6 minutes and 23 seconds. So that is within the 30-second grace period. And speaker number 2 was 7 minutes and 3 seconds. The evaluator number 1 is supposed to be, evaluators are 2 to 3 minutes. Evaluator number 1 was 2 minutes and 42 seconds within time. Evaluator number 2 was 4 minutes and 2 seconds, just a little bit over. And grammarian report was 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and the general evaluator was 4 minutes and 16 seconds. Okay, that's my report.
Merci, Madam Tamar. You did a great job. I don't know what accent that was, but I keep trying. I would now like to turn it over to the Toastmaster of the day. Both the Toastmaster and the General Evaluator get to talk a lot, so enough said. I would also like to make a comment about Michelle said something about think on your feet. And what we do here is we teach people how to think on their feet instead of sink on their feet. So that said, I would like to introduce our Area 82 Director, who is Natalie Vogel, who's going to be speaking to us for just a few minutes. Thank you. Please welcome Natalie. President, when you're done.
Okay. Coming into a new setting, that fear is, I hope I find something to say, because I tend to be that shy, quiet person, which is why I'm in Toastmasters, to try to get over that. You guys gave me a ton. I am very impressed by this group. I will start by just telling you who I am and where I come from. My name is Natalie Vogel. I am a member of the Modern Voices Club at American Modern and the Brown County Club out in Georgetown, out in the sticks. I was their club coach, well, technically still am, but I joined them. And I joined Toastmasters initially in 2012, so it's been about 5.5 years. And I credit this experience to a promotion that I finally received. One that I worked for a long time on, and they always said, good at the job, but you need to speak up. And finally was able to get over that hurdle and got what I wanted back in March. So, thank you. So this program does work if you use the tools that they give you. First, just thank you for letting me come and just observe. Sometimes it's nice to just sit back and watch. The 2 icebreakers, I don't know if you're newer members or just doing the speeches now. It took me 13 months to give my first speech. I wasn't too excited about that. So newer or not, 2 icebreakers is wonderful. This group's got to be doing something right. And new speakers are the lifeline to a club, or Toastmasters in general. Because if people don't want to work on improving themselves, we wouldn't have a reason to come together. Grammarian, when I go to these things, I tend to find things that I can take back to my own club. I like how you had everyone say the word out loud. That was a nice touch. But once you say it, you think about it more. And the same thing for the tips that were given throughout, how when you're nervous to say excited. Those 2 things I wrote down, and I'll be taking them back to the Voices crew this week. I admit, when I even heard about this club being a part of Area 82, back before I thought about the area director stuff, a member of the club that I'm in, I think was a member of this group for a while, and she said they put their meetings on YouTube. And I'm like, I'm never going to visit that group. No. And it is intimidating, the thought of it. However, I'm now seeing the benefits of this, and you guys are really good about details, and it's very polished and really a good example for the community to see. Maybe next time I can get some of my others to come and check it out. The atmosphere, I think, is great. I'm really having a hard time finding any like advice to give. I feel like I'm benefiting more from this visit than anything. Evaluations are an area that I struggle in, and you guys are great. You're good at the giving praise, but also offering some areas to improve, which is why evaluations, that's the only reason they work. The only way they work is if you have something to take from it. And that is really something I saw in all roles. This group seems to have a very good teaching aspect. And I like how you work that into everything. The word of the day, throughout this meeting, you guys used it a lot, and I every time had the urge to knock on the table. Because in the groups that I'm in, that is something, when you use the word of the day, you knock on the table. Our group, The Voices, has even turned that into a contest for each quarter on who can use it the most times. You guys would blow that contest out of the water. But yeah, the first time, I came very close once, and I actually hit the table and realized nobody else was doing it. So I tried to stop. Really just great speakers in this club, impressive club as a whole, and I look forward to visiting again early next year. Thank you. Madam President.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And that we come to the end of our meeting today, and I'm so glad that we had our 2 icebreakers. The people came, gave their speeches with a little bit of encouragement. And I want to let Sean know that I wore my fall pin. I don't have anything Christmas on yet, so I wore my fall pin for today. And thank everyone at home for listening to our meeting, and come join us sometime. That's a wrap.